Okay, I'm inviting Publius up. How are you, Publius?
Doing quite well, Maud. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm doing well. I think most of today's discussion is going to be about the new BFP, which is the multisig proposal, and that is moving the keys from Publius into what is proposed. Publius, do you want to maybe give a summary of what is that proposal, and then we can open it for questions?
Sure. So everyone should go read the proposal, as this won't be a relatively non-substantive summary. But the point is, obviously the DAO has already approved the plan to relaunch Beanstalk with off-chain governance. And so what this BFP is doing is laying out the rules for the off-chain governance that will be executed by Snapshot vote. And in particular, this BFP is transferring ownership of the Beanstalk contract to a new multisig wallet. Thinking out loud here, it probably should be a BIP, not a BFP, as it's a change to the protocol, not a Beanstalk Farms proposal. That's just a thought. But the concept is that the rules are being defined for how the community-run multisig, which will be responsible for executing the will of the DAO as evidenced through the off-chain governance, in a as permissionless and trustless fashion as possible. So the plan is for this to be a 5 of 9 signature wallet, Gnosis safe. Originally, it'll start as 5 of 8, as the proposal states, because one of the signers needs a little more time to get their setup ready. So that's one detail that's relevant. But it seems like, based on the discussion in the channel around the proposal, that the main question on everyone's mind, or the main topic of discussion, is whether or not the key holders, the signers, should be anonymous, or pseudonymous, or totally doxed. And the proposal lays out in the proposal, it's specified that the signers are all anonymous. And the thinking behind that is that the main, in our perception, the main risk associated with off-chain governance is the potential corruption of a majority of the key holders or keys. And in short, the best thing that can be done to minimize the risk of corruption of the signers is for nobody to know who the signers are. And so that does require some level of trust in Publius, if that makes sense, in the sense of, well, who's going to select the signers? So the proposal currently lays out that we, Publius, would select the signers, and otherwise nobody would know who the signers are. And the proposal lays out that at most there would be 4 Beanstalk Farms community members on the wallet, Beanstalk Farms contributors on the wallet. Publius would hold at most 1 key between the 3 of us, and the rest of the keys would be held by reputable community members. And the concept is that at the end of the day, we don't have any problem. We'd have to check with all the key holders that they're still comfortable doing it and are comfortable with their pseudonym being made public, if you will. But we don't have a problem per se with sharing it, other than it does seem to be suboptimal from a security perspective. So this is a topic of discussion that probably should be thoroughly discussed. But at the end of the day, these are suboptimal options that we're choosing from, and whether or not the key holders are known to the community or not is it's unclear how substantive of an improvement that will be from a trust perspective. Now, it is worth noting that the goal here is to have total trustlessness and permissionless, and just the fact that we're having this conversation kind of sucks. But it does need to be had, and we do need to collectively decide on a procedure for selecting signers. And the other question here is, let's say that the key holders are known. Now, should there be a selection process for the key holders? Now, does the community get to vote on key holders? Does Publius still get to choose the key holders, but the community just knows? These are all open questions on our mind. Obviously, given the barn raise is coming up quickly, the goal would be to have this discussion sooner rather than later. But obviously, it's important that the necessary time is taken to have this discussion.
Okay. If I was to summarize that and a little bit of what was going through in that channel as well, I guess the questions are, first of all, how do we know? It's not all Publius, and they just said that it's given to others. And then the second one would be, which you just mentioned, is who selects? Is it Publius that selects, or do we want to figure out a different way of the selection? And then the lastly is that even if we choose people who are like pseudo-anonymous and the community knows them, what happens if something in the future happens again and people come in and be like, those who were in control were actually like pseudo-anonymous? How does that look from an optics point of view? And maybe we can tackle them one by one, and starting with the last one is, does Beanstalk, if the community knows who these people are and these people choose to be pseudo-anonymous or not lay out their identity, but the community knows them and they've been part of the community for a while, does Beanstalk care about the optics, or do we more, we're more objective and we care about, what does that mean to the community itself?
Yeah, these are really good questions. And with regards to the first one on how do we know, how can people verify that we don't have all the keys? The concept is that's what currently is the situation. Publius has sole ownership of Beanstalk. And this is, if we change this to a 5 of 9 multisig that we still have all the keys to, that would be, in practice, no substantive change, and then it would just be like a facade to create some sort of perceived decentralization where it's not there. I guess that's an action we could take, but it's very hard to justify why that would be a reasonable action to take, given that centralization is, in our perception, basically the main risk to Beanstalk at the moment. So we don't want to have these keys. We don't want to be the owner of Beanstalk. So it is heavily in our interest to make that the case. So while I recognize there's, in theory, nothing you can do to verify it, which is a problem, it's very hard to understand the logic behind that. Although understand the lack of ability to verify makes it tough. So the other issue is who chooses. And in short, if they're anonymous, then the goal is to minimize the number of people that know who they are, and therefore the concept would be to have them selected by Publius and then no one else knows. And there is some concern as to if we could be compromised to disclose who the signers were, that would basically just put us in the same place that we would be in if all the signers were public, except I guess there's an edge case where we could be compelled to disclose who the signers were and also be compelled to continuously refrain from mentioning that we had been compelled to disclose that information to someone, and therefore they would have an information advantage over everyone else in trying to corrupt Beanstalk, and that's another risk that needs to be evaluated. The other question that you highlighted, Maud, is with regards to pseudonyms. I think this is where push comes to shove at the end of the day. Because if the wallet is going to use, if people are comfortable using pseudonymous people on the wallet, it's very hard from a logical perspective to justify why that is better than having anonymous people. Now, in theory, the pseudonyms do have some reputation to maintain, and they could be real people, but it's, hard to evaluate if people are comfortable with pseudonyms, the relative difference in people being comfortable with anonyms. Now, these are tough questions. Ultimately, it's a very sticky situation, frankly, and not sure we have the best answers to any of these questions, as they're just, crappy situations. So, but the concept is if we're going to use pseudonyms, which I think is makes a lot of sense given the construct of the Beanstalk community where almost everyone is pseudonymous. Then the question is, well, if everyone's pseudonymous, well, what's the problem with being anonymous? Now, I get there's some additional benefit in being able to verify that the pseudonyms confirm that they have the keys. And I guess you could try to verify through external data that Publius is not the pseudonym. So that's true. But other than that, not sure what it's a very tough thing to analyze the actual costs and benefits of.
Okay. Can we maybe discuss a little bit about the rationale behind being, anonymous? That has been laid out in the proposal about, the potential of corrupting the multisig or the wallet holders. Can you explain that a little bit, and what's the potential? What's the worst case scenario that can happen?
The worst case scenario is if everyone knows who the signers are, someone coordinates an attack where people with guns or wrenches show up at all the signers' doors and compel them to push malicious code to Beanstalk.
Great. So here we're talking about those people, once you know them, that's like a weakness, basically, because, these are the targets.
And it's highlighting who the targets are.
Understood. Okay. What about other ideas that can be done to do this? Can it be such as so we're talking about like 9? Can it be like 4? 4 and 4, and there's a group of people that only know the 4, but they don't know the other 4, and vice versa, things like that. Do you think are these options explored? The way I see it is that it's either whatever choice you choose is going to be somewhere in the spectrum between being known or doxed and anonymous. So it's just you might make it a little bit less risky, but it's still risky towards the worst case scenario that we just said, which is the targets. You're giving a little bit more information, so you're moving more towards that risk or that exposure.
Yeah, I think the biggest potential issue with this plan as it's laid out is that if nobody knows who the signers are, meaning none of the signers know who any of the other signers are, if, let's say, Publius was killed or removed from the situation entirely such that we were unable to take any action or communicate in any way, now you have people that have the keys, but you could potentially also have people that claim to have the keys, and there's it's pretty easy for people to verify whether they own the keys or not. But the concept is there's some potential issues there that could exist, but I don't think they're particularly likely. But it's, these are all the edge cases that need to get talked about or talked through. And so maybe there's something to be said for every signer knows who one of the other signers are. And maybe that people shouldn't have one other. It's tough. It's like, should people know who knows them? And then in that case, is it a partner system or is it a chain? Or now it's two-way. It's like unclear what the best policy would be.
Okay. I think we kind of summarized the proposal and maybe some of the concerns. We can open now the floor for questions. Anyone can come up and let's continue this discussion. And that can be to share opinions as well. Even if you're happy with the plan and you want to share why you think that's the case, feel free to do so. Okay. Otherwise, how does this work now, Publius? When is the snapshot going to go out, and how long will people have to vote on it?
I don't know the details on this, but I believe I saw somewhere that it was likely going to be a 24-hour snapshot to hopefully be done prior to the barn raise starting. Don't know exactly when it will go live either. And thinking kind of out loud here, perhaps maybe there should just be two given that maybe it's tough to know what the decision should be for the BFP or the BIP. If it should probably be a BIP, frankly. And the question is, it's tough to know what the right thing to do in terms of voting options are. Should people be able to vote yes or no? Should people be able to vote yes for the proposal? Yes, but pseudonymous signers, and maybe a third option for yes, but doxed signers, like fully doxed, and then a fourth option for no. I don't know. I haven't been involved in this process, so I don't know what the plan is on that front. But it probably should be more than just a yes or no, I would think.
Okay, that's one thing to take into consideration in the snapshot. But I believe it goes without saying that if you don't have options, then it's always a no, and you wait until you find. If it's a yes or no, and you're not happy with it, it's always a no, and you can wait until you get something that you.
Which is much more elegant, right? So the only issue here is we are a little pressed for time, so it would be suboptimal to have the proposal fail and then have another 3-day process between those proposals, because the hope is to have this transferred to the new community multisig before the barn race starts. But if it's a couple days late, it's a couple days late.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. I think if there are no questions, we can end this call here. And once again, 3 more days for the barn raise, and that will start at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll see you in the next meeting.